Elizabeth Taylor was a member of the royal family of Hollywood. She became one of the most talked-about characters in entertainment history thanks to her violet eyes, classic film roles, and personal life that made headlines. Her life was far more complicated than it seemed, though, underneath all the glitz and glory. Her name was followed for a long time by whispers and conjecture, suggests that more was going on behind the scenes than what was ever revealed to the public. A new angle on the renowned actress is being revealed by recently released details. Elizabeth Taylor was born on February 27, 1932, in a stunning house at 8 Wildwood Road in the North London area of Hampstead Garden. This was the beginning of her distinguished career. Frances and Sarah Taylor were born in Kansas to American parents who had moved to London in 1929 to open an art gallery. Howard, Elizabeth's older brother, and the two of them enjoyed a life of opulence among the political elite, artists, and writers of the day. Colonel Victor Castellet, a close relative of hers, was her unofficial godfather and a major figure in her youth. While in Highgate, she attended a Montessori school. Along with her mother and Castellet's Christian scientific ideals, she was brought up in that tradition. However, all changed in 1939 as the family braced themselves for war due to rising tensions in Europe. U.S. The United States Ambassador, Joseph Kennedy, urged them to return home. On the SS, Sarah brought back Howard and Elizabeth first, while Frances stayed behind to close the London gallery. They made their way to California. Frances would subsequently join them that year. Beverly Hills became the family's permanent home. In California, Elizabeth's striking good looks, especially her thick eyelashes and vivid violet blue eyes, could hardly be ignored. Many people, including those she didn't know, would tell her mom that Elizabeth should have been an actress. War prevented them from returning to England, and Frances's art studio attracted interest from the Hollywood establishment, so her mother eventually agreed, even if she didn't believe it at first. The first film deal that Elizabeth ever signed was with Universal Pictures in 1941, when she was just 9 years old. She had a little part in 1942's There's One Born Every Minute, but the studio didn't see much potential in her and let her go after just 1 year. A casting director went so far as to say she was unqualified and had too old-looking eyes. However, her narrative did not conclude there. Afterwards, in 1942, she was helped by a family friend to audition for MGM's Lassie Come Home. After landing a supporting role in 1943, she was offered a 7-year contract by the studio. Her big break arrived at last. She made her film debut in 1944's National Velvet, at the tender age of 12, playing the role of a girl who resolves to compete in a horse race that is traditionally reserved for boys. In an instant, Elizabeth went from being a child actress to a Hollywood icon. Her aspirations were lofty, according to MGM. She and her parents were opposed to having her name changed, having her baby teeth pulled, and having braces placed on. There was little time for her to simply be a child because she worked from dawn till sunset, went to school, shot, practiced dancing, and had photography sessions. Even when she was a teenager, they began shaping her public image into that of a beautiful young woman, setting the stage for her future stardom. She finally proved she was more than just a gorgeous face with her 1951 role in A Place in the Sun. There was an actress in her. At that point, Elizabeth Taylor was officially royalty in Hollywood, as critics praised her for her profound emotional range. The controversy that caused Elizabeth Taylor's career to rock. Elizabeth Taylor's private life began to garner as much media attention as her professional career in the early 1950s. In a spectacular ceremony orchestrated by MGM, she married hotel tycoon Conrad Nicky Hilton Jr. when she was 18 years old. To promote Father of the Bride, 1950, the studio used the union as a publicity coup. However, the marriage quickly descended into chaos. Taylor came to the realization that she had erred within a few months. Hilton allegedly exhibited aggressive behavior and struggled with alcoholism. She took a risk by filing for divorce within 8 months. Doing so was unusual for a young woman in the public eye at that time. Serious consequences ensued. Fans and tabloids were both perplexed by her decision, especially because the public had been led to believe the union was a fairy tale. The studio MGM was just as unhappy as Alexander Walker, the biographer. A 1952 romantic comedy called Love Is Better Than Ever was Taylor's punishment from the studio. It was a low-budget production. A clear warning had been issued. Consequences would follow any deviation from the studio's control, including in her personal life. Upon finishing the film, Taylor was sent to Britain to take part in Ivanhoe, 1952, an expensive production by MGM. The experience didn't wow her. From her perspective, playing Rebecca was a bit part in an uninteresting plot. The film did well at the box office, though, making $11 million globally, a win for the studio, even if Taylor wasn't a fan. In 1952, Taylor renewed her contract with MGM for another 7 years, despite her annoyance with the studio. The reason was straightforward: money was tight. She was expecting their first child with her husband, the British actor Michael Wilding, whom she had married by that point. In order to sweeten the deal, MGM offered Wilding a 3-year acting contract, a house loan, a salary of $4,700 per week, equivalent to around $55,000 today, and a compensation to Taylor. Nonetheless, this further cemented MGM's grip on her. In early 1954, her first 2 films under the New Deal, Rhapsody and Elephant Walk, were released within a span of 10 days. She played the role of a woman caught in the middle of a passionate tug-of-war between 2 musicians in the film Rhapsody. She played a British woman in Elephant Walk, becoming at home on a Ceylon tea plantation, a position she assumed following Vivian Lee's illness. She also performed in Beau Brummel, a historical drama that she found unappealing later that year. She confessed, "I gave one of the worst performances of my career." However, she got over it after seeing the self-referential film The Last Time I Saw Paris. Her description cemented my desire to pursue acting, instead of yawning my way through parts. Her weight gained scandal. By the late 1960s, Elizabeth Taylor's looks, previously heralded worldwide, were starting to draw a different sort of attention. Now, in her late 30s, she had gained significant weight, and the transformation did not escape the notice of the industry or the media. During a time when Hollywood was trending toward a leaner, more natural look, as popularized by stars Jane Fonda and Julie Christie, Taylor's curvy figure became a signpost the media employed to signal her fall from grace. The transformation was cruel. The same tabloids that had previously worshipped her gorgeous violet eyes and flawless hourglass figure now fixated on her up and down body. Photos of her in bikinis or gowns were no longer admired, but criticized and dissected. Her face and appearance changed, but instead of embracing her growth as a woman growing older under the public eye, the media became nasty. Taylor, despite all her giftedness, was now frequently defined by her weight. Headlines that previously eulogized her loveliness now analyzed her physique with brutal honesty. Her career roles were thinner on the ground, not due to a lack of ability. She was still as forceful and insightful on camera as ever, but because she no longer fit the studio's strict definitions of womanhood. The weight gain was insignificant concerning the vast amounts of talent she still had. But the late 60s in Hollywood had no patience or tolerance for imperfection, particularly in females. Taylor's changing figure became a convenient metaphor for an acting career that critics argued was on the skids, despite most of the criticism being based not on her performances, but on her appearance. It was a tough lesson on how fame, and particularly for women in the spotlight, is too frequently connected to youth and thinness. Her marriages, relationships, and children. Elizabeth Taylor's own life was as melodramatic as her movies, perhaps more so. She married 8 times. She married 2 of those times to the same man, and each of her relationships was tabloid fodder. As her biographer Alexander Walker put it once, whether she liked it or not, marriage is the matrix of the myth that began surrounding Elizabeth Taylor from when she was 16. Even as a teenager, Hollywood had big plans for her. MGM, the studio she worked with, set her up with football star Glenn Davis. She even planned to marry him after he returned from Korea. Later, she got engaged to William Pauly Jr., and film mogul Howard Hughes once tried to buy her hand in marriage with a 6-figure offer to her parents. She turned him down. Elizabeth felt that a young marriage was the right thing to do. She was bred to believe that love and marriage were synonymous. In retrospect, she conceded she was emotionally immature and expected marriage to free her from MGM and her parents. She married hotel heiress Conrad Nicky Hilton Jr. when she was 18. Taylor suffered a miscarriage during one of his abusive outbursts. They broke up after 8 months. Her second union with British actor Michael Wilding was calmer. He was 20 years her senior and provided her with the stability she was seeking then. They had 2 sons, but his flagging career and the age gap tested them. They broke up in 5 years. She wed producer Mike Todd next and gave birth to a daughter with him. The relationship was charged with energy and publicity stunts. Sadly, Todd was killed in a plane crash a year later. Devastated, Taylor turned to singer Eddie Fisher, who was then married to actress Debbie Reynolds. Their affair became a massive scandal. Taylor was accused of being a homewrecker, but she wed Fisher nevertheless, although she later explained that it was due to bereavement. During the shooting of Cleopatra in Italy, Taylor started an intense and heavily publicized romance with her co-star Richard Burton, a married man. Their attraction was palpable, and they wed in 1964, only 10 days after her divorce from Fisher. Their existence abounding in excess, spending, and opulence captivated the masses. They appeared in 11 movies and became the Hollywood couple par excellence, Liz and Dick. They divorced in 1974 and then remarried in 1975. But that didn't make it to the end of the year either. Taylor then wed politician John Warner and expected to live a quiet life. Instead, she became bored and isolated. She started to gain weight, got hooked on prescription medication and alcohol, and ultimately divorced him as well. Taylor married for the final time in the 1990s to construction worker Larry Fortinsky, with whom she had met at rehab. They got married at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch, licensing the wedding photos for $1 million to benefit her AIDS Foundation. They divorced in 1996, but remained on good terms for life. In her last years, Taylor shared a deep platonic friendship with actor Colin Farrell. They talked on the phone frequently, largely to discuss how they were surviving insomnia. Her religious beliefs. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't only famous for her looks, acting skills, and sensationalized relationships. She also made some personal and daring decisions that differentiated her from others in Hollywood. One of them was her embrace of Judaism back in 1959. Even though two of her spouses, Mike Todd and Eddie Fisher, were Jewish, Taylor insisted that her conversion was unrelated to them. She reported having wished to convert for a long time and discovering comfort and dignity and hope in Judaism. "I feel as if I have been a Jew all my life." She is quoted as saying at one time, her godfather, Victor Kosselet, and her mother, who were both ardent supporters of Zionism, probably had something to do with her early interest in the Jewish religion. Though after her conversion, Elizabeth didn't merely quietly observe her new faith. She became extremely busy promoting Jewish and Zionist causes. In 1959, she purchased $100,000 in Israeli bonds, an act which forthwith engendered resentment. Numerous Arab nations of the Middle East and of Africa blacklisted her films in response. She was even forbidden from going into Egypt to film Cleopatra in 1962. 2 years later, they reversed that decision when officials saw that the film provided Egypt with good publicity. Taylor wasn't hesitant to take a stand for what she knew was right. She raised money for the Jewish National Fund, served on the board of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and worked for Soviet Jews' right to immigrate to Israel. She even postponed a visit to the USSR to protest the anti-Israel attitude of the country during the Six-Day War. One of her strongest acts was in 1976, when Israeli civilians were being held hostage during a hijacking at Entebbe. Taylor herself volunteered to be a substitute hostage, a profoundly personal act of courage and solidarity. She next appeared in a movie about the affair, Victory at Entebbe, and narrated the Holocaust documentary, Genocide, which received an Academy Award. Elizabeth Taylor's religion was never just about her. It was intentional. She lived it with fearlessness and conviction. She was Hollywood's ultimate fashion and jewelry icon. Elizabeth Taylor was not only a film legend, she was an actual fashion icon, period, both on and off the red carpet. From her formative years at MGM Studios, she was attired by a few of the best costume designers of the era, such as Helen Rose and Edith Head. As she transitioned into the 1960s, her gorgeous looks were regularly styled by Irene Sheriff. Yet another Hollywood fashion titleist, some of her most iconic movie looks became legendary in their own right. Who can forget the stately white ball gown in A Place in the Sun, 1951? Or that time-honored Grecian frock in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, 1958? She also sported a dramatic green A-line dress in Suddenly Last Summer, 1959, and in Butterfield 8, 1960. She turned a plain slip and fur coat into a fashion statement. And who would ever forget her dramatic Cleopatra appearance in 1963? That movie made more than headlines. It started the trend of cat eye makeup with bold black eyeliner. But it wasn't only her wardrobe that made Elizabeth iconic. She had a lifelong passion for jewelry, and her collection was legendary. Her marriage to Richard Burton notoriously presented her with some of the most stunning jewels ever seen. The 33-carat Krupp diamond, the 69-carat Taylor Burton diamond, and the La Peregrina pearl. They were not mere accessories, more like symbols of the romance whirlwind. As if that was not enough, Taylor adored her jewels so much so that she even penned a book about them titled My Love Affair with Jewelry in 2002. She also helped make designers such as Valentino and Halston household names. In 1997, she was awarded the Lifetime of Glamour Award by the Council of Fashion Designers of America, CRFDA, in recognition of her ageless sense of fashion. Following her death, her jewelry and wardrobe were sold by Christie's to fund her AIDS organization, ETF. Her jewelry alone sold for an astonishing $156.8 million, and her clothes and accessories generated another $5.5 million, showing that Elizabeth Taylor's glamour never goes out of style. Friendships in high places. Elizabeth Taylor was more than a film actress. She was a person who traveled in the uppermost realms of fame, friendship, and power. Her entourage had included world icons such as Michael Jackson, Princess Diana, and Elton John. Her friendship with Michael Jackson, especially, was one of Hollywood's most gossiped about. They first met in the early 1980s and soon became inseparable. Taylor once said their connection was the purest, most giving love I've ever known, while Jackson described her as like a mother, sister, and best friend all in one. They shared private moments, deep emotional conversations, and defended each other fiercely during their darkest times. She also reportedly shared a warm friendship with Princess Diana. Although few saw them personally together outside, they were both celebrities in their own right, tough, beautiful, and under constant surveillance. Their shared appreciation of philanthropy work and their ambivalent feelings toward fame united them in silent solidarity. Elton John was another close friend. He frequently publicized her activism, especially her unbowed campaign against AIDS at a time when many celebrities were mum. In return, Taylor offered his AIDS Foundation backing and held his hand through his woes. Aside from these celebrity friendships, rumors of Taylor's connections with political influence, as well as clandestine protection, have long existed. Rumors included that she had personal acquaintances within the CIA or White House insiders. Although these rumors were never substantiated, individuals speculated that Taylor's ability to avoid some of the more scathing media criticism, despite her very publicized scandals, suggested strong behind-the-scenes powers maintaining her image undiminished. Her illness and death. Elizabeth Taylor might have had a glamorous existence on screen, but off-screen, she fought with serious illnesses for all but a handful of years of her life. She was born with scoliosis, a curvature of the spine, and while shooting National Velvet in 1944, she injured her back, an injury that went unnoticed for years but tortured her with pain for decades. In 1956, she underwent surgery to have several of her spinal discs replaced with donated bone. She was also not out of trouble with her back. In 1961, pneumonia had brought her to the brink of death, so severe that she underwent an emergency tracheotomy. Her throat had a huge tube inserted in it to allow her to breathe. She also underwent numerous surgeries throughout the years, including a 1968 hysterectomy that exacerbated the pain in her back and hips. To deal with her ongoing physical distress, Taylor consumed alcohol and prescription medication, which resulted in addiction. Taylor was courageous enough to be the first high-profile celebrity to publicly admit herself into the Betty Ford Center, where she remained for 7 weeks. From late 1983 well into early 1984. Although she did have a relapse later in the decade, she went back for treatment a second time in 1988. After her marriage to Senator John Warner in the 1970s, Taylor put on a great deal of weight and was severely criticized for it in the press. She retaliated by writing a 1988 book entitled Elizabeth Takes Off, recounting her troubles with weight gain and self-esteem. She also smoked quite heavily for the majority of her life until a second severe bout of pneumonia in 1990 compelled her to give up, although accounts indicate that she took up menthol cigarettes once more by 1995. During her later life, Taylor's health worsened further. She underwent 2 hip replacement operations, underwent treatment for skin cancer, and underwent surgery for a benign brain tumor in 1997. By the early 2000s, she was dependent on a wheelchair and was diagnosed with congestive heart failure in 2004. Elizabeth Taylor passed away from heart failure on March 23, 2011, at the age of 79, at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Her funeral was held the next day at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. True to her flair and humor, Taylor had one last wish for the ceremony to start 15 minutes late. As her representative explained, she even wanted to be late for her own funeral. She was buried in the Great Mausoleum, having left behind a legacy not only of beauty and celebrity, but of unimaginable resilience through suffering. The solved mystery Hollywood's golden era may appear glamorous on the screen, but behind the velvet drapes, it was anything but pretty, particularly at MGM. Well before Harvey Weinstein's name became synonymous with evil, studio moguls held their stars in their greedy palms. Women performers, especially young ones, were frequently at the mercy of these moguls, professionally, physically, and emotionally. Consider Judy Garland's case. As detailed by The Guardian, she was signed to MGM at the age of 13 and came up under close observation, subjected to inappropriate advances and predatory behavior by studio moguls, including Louis B. Mayer himself. Garland has spoken of being called a fat little pig and put on draconian diets, occasionally given chicken soup and black coffee instead of a meal. On shooting days, she was given pep pills to keep her on her feet and then sedated so that filming could continue the following day, usually on a cold floor. This was all part of a larger factory mentality at studios such as MGM, complete with in-house police, staff escort, and enforced image regulation. Mayer treated his stars like children and employees, requiring compliance in every aspect of their lives. Women were frequently required to barter personal boundaries for roles. There were widespread reports of studio parties involving hired escorts and deeply inappropriate conduct. Elizabeth Taylor, who came to MGM as a teen, knew this pressure firsthand. Although in public, she seldom spoke the full measure. In a 2004 interview, she confided she felt horribly manipulated as a young actress under the studio system. Although she didn't mention names, the remark suggests something profoundly uncomfortable. Taylor once shared that she lived in fear of a certain powerful figure from her early years, though she never named him publicly, suggesting there was more to that early Hollywood experience than we're told. We do know MGM suppressed scandals aggressively. Patricia Douglas, an MGM event dancer in 1937, claimed to have been assaulted by a studio employee, allegations that were reportedly suppressed by MGM. This structure granted executives disproportionate power and probably encouraged them to act with impunity. No wonder so many stars kept quiet. MGM's culture made ambition a weakness. Young actors became watched-over properties and tools shaped to fit fantasies and markets. Elizabeth Taylor survived, but too many others did not. What happened behind the scenes in old Hollywood is a reminder that even the biggest stars were not always in control of their own lives. For someone like Elizabeth Taylor, who seemed to have it all, beauty, fame, and success, the reality was often far more complicated. She entered the industry as a child and was quickly thrown into a world where power was concentrated in the hands of a few men. Decisions were made for her, and expectations were placed on her shoulders long before she had the chance to fully understand them. But Taylor's story isn't just one of pain or pressure. It's also a story of strength. She may have been manipulated by the studio system early on, but over time she learned how to push back. She reinvented herself time and again took control of her own narrative and eventually became a powerful voice in her own right. Not just in Hollywood, but in the world of activism, fashion, and philanthropy. We must remember stories like hers not just for the gossip or glamour, but for what they teach us about how power works. The studio system may be gone, but the patterns of control and silence it encouraged still exist in many industries today. By looking back honestly, we can begin to understand the cost of that silence and the importance of giving people, especially young women, the space to speak up and be heard. Elizabeth Taylor will always be remembered as a legend, but behind the diamonds and red carpets was a woman who fought to be seen, heard, and respected on her own terms. Her life reminds us that even in the brightest spotlight, there can be shadows, and that telling the truth about those shadows is part of honoring the legacy of someone who lived through them. If you found this story moving or eye-opening, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age. We get deep into the lives behind the legends, what the cameras didn't show, and the truths that shaped icons like Elizabeth Taylor.